Since we could not find a single reference in modern civilization to the existence of a phenomenon, which we called Guism, it is impossible to present any materials on the history of this matter. In connection with this, first of all, we are offering our definition of this phenomenon. A Gui is someone who has a narcissistic, self-fertile intellect aimed at achievement of complete subordination of all remaining systems of psychophysiology to itself and reduction of these systems to the state of secondary segments. Guism, do not belong to categories of phenomena, special occurrences, rare facts, and cannot be attributed to someone's subjective understanding because it is a universal occurrence available for wide observation. In modern culture, Gui are usually called by words human, people. Guism does not belong to the category of natural phenomenon. This phenomenon is cultural. A Gui is a product of modern civilization. Due to the absence of basis in the form of knowledge about nature of human psyche, a Gui can rightfully be described as a freak, a mutant. Mutations in the form of Guism have a psychical pathogenesis, pathological changes, and, unlike most biological mutations that do not affect the phenotype as a set of characteristics inherent in the individual at a certain stage of development, extend to the entire psychophysiology of an individual. Similar to mutations that occur in a living cell, about which we know from biology, the considered type of psychical mutations occur as a result of influence of cultural factors and pathological environment on an individual. The consequences of Guism are comparable to consequences of biological mutations, where in those cases, when a mutation affects functioning of a cell, nature starts up utilization mechanisms and the cell gets destroyed. Only in this case, Homo sapiens get utilized. In the case of the phenomenon under consideration, mutation, from the Latin mutatio, alteration, change, indicates pathological changes in functioning of a human program, which lead to breakage of all systems of psychophysiology of a biorobot. In modern civilization, the absence of the catalog of human population, which presents detailed information about what the soul, psyche, of Homo is, turns biorobots of this Homo species into mutants Gui. 2. Terms. We will begin the description of this phenomenon by explaining terms which we used in the definition. The word someone indicates that a Gui is neither an individual nor, and especially not, a human. By the word narcissistic, we mean a self-sentiment that is universal for all Gui, a feeling of one's own greatness, uniqueness, value, significance, which in most cases is not confirmed by any real qualities or actual state of things. A Gui, no matter who he is, invariably suffers the illusion of self-importance, possession of qualities that are not actually present, for example, omnipotence, immortality, and so on. Narcissism, hypertrophied egocentrism, feeling of being the center of the earth, a planet around which everything revolves, are inherent in a Gui. A Gui is convinced of his exclusivity. One of revealing examples of this is that a Gui considers himself a human, the crown of creation, king of nature, even though essentially he is just an involuntary living machine. In the works of modern researchers in the field of biology, the term self-fertile means the ability of a plant to produce normal, healthy fruit after self-pollination. Therefore, in the case of a Gui, perhaps it would be more correct to use the word self-sterility, since fruits of his activities are hardly possible to categorize as normal creative products. On the contrary, products of autogamous, self-pollinating intellect are extremely ugly, be it in Darwin's theory, philosophical theory of Hegel, Christianity, or musical creations of any pop band. On the other hand, the term self-fertility successfully reflects properties of a Gwei. By self-fertility, we mean the following. A characteristic trait of a Gwei is that throughout his life, figuratively speaking, he boils in a soup of his own perceptions. He lives in thought-up illusory worlds, which he organized himself, and which have little to do with reality. Self-fertile intellect is wild imagination, fantasy, some virtual worlds, constant departure into the space of his mental constructs. Carefully protecting the little that he has, namely his house of cards, which by nature is flimsy and can fall apart even at the slightest breeze, a Gwei trains himself not to see, not to hear, not to understand anything that could destroy this phantom. This negatively affects both his learning abilities and the quality of work of his intellect in general. A Gwei actually shuts himself off from information that comes from the outside, especially carefully protects his mind from intellectual schemes of others that do not support his own, and from any information contrary to his vision of the world. However, a Gwei does not have, and by definition cannot have, any vision, because the world is one for all, unambiguous, and according to the logic of things, cannot have as many variations as there are individual mental constructs. At the same time, any Gwei piously believes that the world is as he perceives it, or, ideally, should be. A Gwei does not wish to change his opinion even if there is fear of physical death. He would rather sacrifice his own health, development, money, relationships, comfort, anything at all, in order not to bring into his once established views of the world and himself anything that could break or cardinally change them. Since, from a Gwei's point of view, functions of change, including mutations, and destruction can only be performed by his own intellect. This is self-fertility, and, even if it is self-fertility at the moment, in most cases the consequence of ignorance, a forced measure, it is possible to state with absolute certainty that this is exactly what makes him a Gwei mutant, a zombie, a walking corpse, a dead person.